Well, welcome everybody to the question and answer session for this RFP. My name is Brennan. I'm the Grants and Contracts Coordinator for the Mayor's Fund. I'll be co-facilitating this question and answer session along with my colleague Shannon Allen. How this will work is in terms of the agenda, we're just going to do a quick round of introductions, then we will pass it to our wonderful colleagues at the Mayor's Office of Child Care to do their presentation, which will be followed by comments from our Director of Finance at the Mayor's Fund about the financial aspects that this awardee will have to work with. And we will conclude with a question and answer session. Okay, so great. So in terms of introductions, I'll pass it to my colleague, Shannon Allen, to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Allen. I'm the Director of Programs here at the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City. We're super excited for this RFP. Looking forward to just sharing more information today and really sharing about the vision between the Mayor's Fund and the Mayor's Office of Child Care for this really great resource. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Sean.
Good morning, everyone. I am the Programs Associate at the Mayor's Fund. I was working to get this RFP and Q&A running, and I look forward to working with the vendor who wins the contract for this RFP as well. I will pass it to our Finance Director, Mahmood.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Mahmoud Enin. I'm the Director of Finance Operations at the Mayor's Fund. I'll be working with whoever does this RFP, goes through this RFP, and it's just going to be on the financial side. Pass it on to Yvonne to take this one.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yvonne Delbenko. I'm with the Mayor's Office of Childcare and Early Childhood Education. So appreciative of your interest and the time that you're taking to be here. And I look forward to walking us through the RFP in just a couple minutes. I'm going to pass it back to my Mayor's Fund colleagues.
Awesome. I think that that does it in terms of introductions. Yvonne, if you'd like to proceed, I think that's a great time.
And
All right.
just a couple things for flow of our Zoom call. Sorry, just before Yvonne
Please.
jumps in. So guys, we will be taking notes on any questions that come in. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat, and then we'll open up a time for kind of a live Q&A. We'll try to address as many questions as we can live in the call today, but we might also just let you know that we'll post responses to all the questions that are either addressed today or sent via email to make sure that you have a written response as well. So if there's things that come up during the discussion, drop them in the chat. We'll open up a time for discussion, and then this call will be recorded and posted to our website, and then the responses to any questions will also be posted to our website. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you, Shannon. All right. I'm going to share my screen. Can folks see the large slide? Give me a thumb if that's working for you. Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay, fantastic. So I'm just going to orient us to the basic shape of the RFP before we get into answering questions. And to begin, I just wanted to kind of ground us in my office's larger vision for our work, which is that we are charged with building free, high-quality early care and education for every child under 5 years old in New York City. And for us, that means care and education that is delivered in a range of culturally competent settings with, very importantly, educators and caregivers who are prepared, respected, and fairly compensated. And we see the work articulated in this RFP as an instrumental part of building a sustainable ecosystem. So with that, this RFP is about an emergency microgrant program, as you know, and that is a grant program for licensed family child care and group family child care providers. We call those here in New York FCCs and GFCCs, who are facing unexpected situations that threaten their ability to safely or continuously provide services for New York City families. A little bit about the fund before we get into the scope of work that's enumerated in the RFP itself. This is a $3 million fund. The purpose, as I just alluded to, is to provide rapid financial relief to prevent disruptions and closures in our FCC and GFCC programs and to provide the relevant technical assistance, referrals, business capacity supports to those programs so that they can sustain. The grant structure may vary by emergency type and provider eligibility, and the typical range that is contemplated is $1,000 to $10,000 for each grant. And again, the eligible population are licensed family child care providers in New York City. With that, I'm going to quickly walk through the different features of the scope of work and then close with some updates on budget and requirements for actually applying. There are 8 dimensions of the scope of work. I'm not going to read them all to you here. You see them, but I'll say a word about each. First is program refinement and implementation planning. So the RFP describes that the selected administrator will be responsible for actually finalizing the grant model, the eligibility criteria, the application process, workflow, the grant policies and procedures, subject to approval from my office, the Mayor's Office of Child Care and Early Childhood Education. The second piece of the scope of work is around outreach and language access. And so there is an expectation that the selected administrator would have the ability to develop, implement, track, and report on a comprehensive outreach strategy to engage our providers across New York City. Importantly, building outreach materials and engagement processes at a minimum in the following languages: English, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. Application management and award recommendations. The selected administrator will have the responsibility to create and manage accessible application materials, intake, screen applications, assess eligibility, determine award amounts, document recommendations, and so on. And that will go, I should say, through the cycle of the disbursement process, actually getting the money out of the door, which is where we go next: grant distribution and fiscal oversight. The selected administrator will have the responsibility to disperse funds through provider-friendly systems, which are enumerated in the RFP itself, to track payments and expenditures, maintain fiscal controls, reporting protocols, and provide granular financial data back to my office. Technical assistance and referrals. So I referenced this being one of the sort of overriding purposes of this work. The selected administrator will have the responsibility to provide directly or connect providers to technical assistance, training on business sustainability, offering a range of methods, and continually learning to update those methods to meet the needs of our providers. Almost there, folks. Number 6, data privacy and reporting. The selected administrator will need to maintain secure systems for application, award, payment, and TA data, share timely reports with my office, follow agreed privacy protocols, and provide access to relevant program data for oversight, evaluation, and continuous improvement to my office. Underlying all of these buckets of work is the idea of bringing a continuous improvement mindset and practices to this program. And so the selected administrator, as they collect implementation and outcome data, would also be seeking provider feedback, tracking trends, measuring proximal impacts, and helping to codify emerging lessons and challenges so that they can recommend any adjustments to the program for our office to make. Project management and coordination. This is a lot of work, and it requires dedicated either individual or small team to serve as a primary contact to my office and to the Mayor's Fund to coordinate the day-to-day project management, meetings, decisions, etc. And that completes sort of the rapid tour through the different pieces of the scope of work described in the RFP. On budget, this is a $3 million grant pool, as I said, with a maximum $350,000 award to the selected administrator. And the budget should account for the resources needed to deliver the full scope of work that I just described, including the staffing, outreach materials, application development, technology, and any subcontractors that might be contemplated. Applicants must submit a detailed cost proposal identifying staff roles, level of effort, existing capacity and hiring needs, key deliverables, again, subcontractors, and the rationale for those proposed costs. I know that Mahmoud will speak more on some of the financials in just a moment if you have questions here. Timeline. So we have shared, I believe, just to make sure that I get this right, September 15th, I think, is when we're hoping to award. Is that correct, Mayor's Fund?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so sort of working backwards from that, the idea is that the first 2 months of the contract would be devoted to launch and preparation, which we define as finalizing the implementation plan, all of the tools and processes that I described earlier in the scope of work. And we have an expectation that outreach to providers, that is, would begin during that second month of planning. Months 3 to 14 is what we're defining as the active grant period. So that encapsulates a 12-month period where there would be continued outreach, continued application intake, eligibility review, and the disbursement of the actual grants. The expectation is that initial disbursements must begin within 8 weeks of the project launch. The last month of the contract would be devoted to project closeout, final reporting, reconciliation, evaluation, summary of providers reached, grants awarded, and so on. Just pointing to the bottom of this slide, as I also referenced, there's the expectation of ongoing continuous improvement throughout the whole 15-month period, conducting at least 2 midpoint evaluations to assess implementation and refine approach accordingly. And that's all detailed in the RFP itself. Okay, coming to my last slide, last but not least, the application materials and submission process, also reflected in the RFP, is to submit through the online portal by 12 p.m. noon Eastern, I believe, but my Mayor's Fund colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, on August 31st of this year. The proposal narrative, which needs to encapsulate qualifications, your proposed approach, outreach and equity, staffing, data and privacy, continuous improvement, fiscal management, and technical assistance, that is to be no more than 10 pages. Your project budget and budget narrative being no more than 4 pages, and the dimensions of those are described in the RFP. And then last but not least, additional required attachments, a cover sheet, staff resumes, qualifications, organizational chart, certificate of insurance, and the doing business data form, which I believe is linked in the RFP itself. Okay, I know that was a tremendous amount of information. I hope it helped clarify for those of you who have had a chance to read the RFP. And with that, I will turn it back to my Mayor's Fund colleagues.